I remember asking my chief, I was like, hey, I think I want to try to go do this CrossFit Games thing, and I'm not going to have to miss a lot of training. Are you good with it? And he looked at me and he's like, and he didn't really know a lot about CrossFit. He goes, he knew a little bit. And he goes, what's your Fran time? And I was like, it's 2:02. He goes, okay, you can give it a shot.
So he knew enough that was a good Fran time.
So he knew. Yeah, just based off the Fran time alone. And fair. So I only had to miss a little bit of work for that. And but looking back on 2011, that was like the craziest year because we were in the middle of a workup, and like a workup is not easy. Like we're out in the desert doing, up down drills at 130 degrees for like 12 hours a day, just nonstop. And you get these little breaks in between your sessions of workout with military. Yeah. And and everyone goes takes a nap or eats food. And I literally would go in the gym and work out. I was like, and I look back and I'm like, how the hell did I do that?
This is episode number 119 of Pursuing Health featuring Josh Bridges. Welcome to Pursuing Health. I'm Julie Fouché, family medicine resident and former CrossFit Games athlete. Here, I bring to you information and inspiration from experts and everyday individuals for how to use lifestyle to maximize health. Thank you so much for joining me. Now let's get started with this week's episode. Hi there, everybody. Welcome back to Pursuing Health. In this episode, I had the opportunity to record in front of a live audience at the CrossFit Games in Madison, Wisconsin, with a guy who really needs no introduction to the CrossFit community, and that's Josh Bridges. Josh is a 6-time CrossFit Games competitor who has been doing CrossFit since 2005. In addition to 3 first-place finishes at the highly competitive California Regional, his top finishes at the Games include 2nd in 2011 and 4th in 2014. Josh is also a former collegiate wrestler and a U.S. Navy SEAL. In this conversation, we discuss the tools that he's using to speed his recovery from a recent knee surgery that has kept him out of the 2019 Games season. We also talked about his background as a Navy SEAL, what it means to pay the man, and his plans for returning to competition. Towards the end of the episode, we also took some fantastic questions from the audience, including talking about the lessons he's trying to teach his young sons, his take on the well-known hero workout Murph, and some of his thoughts on CrossFit for older athletes. Before we get started, this is a reminder that although I am now officially a doctor, this podcast is meant to share the experiences of individuals and does not provide medical advice. So with that, we'll get started with episode number 119 of Pursuing Health featuring Josh Bridges.
I want to introduce to you some of the characters here. They're both brand new to the CrossFit community.
Look.
First off, you may recognize the man with the mustache, Josh Bridges, 6 times CrossFit Games athlete, former Navy SEAL. He comes out of San Diego, a father of 2 little boys. He's a good man. Dr. Julie Fouché Urcullo, 4 times CrossFit Games athlete, 2nd in 2012, 3rd in 14. She's a family medical resident in Cleveland. She's on the level 1 staff for the seminar. She teaches the MD level 1. And as you can see, she's the host of the Pursuing Health podcast that she started in 2015. She's spoken with everyone from Rich Froning to Tia Claire, Bob Harper, Dave Castro, and more. So ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Julie Fouché and Josh Bridges, let's hear it for them.
Wow.
Hey, that was big.
It's a good intro.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today. This is a very special live recording of the Pursuing Health podcast, and I could not be more excited to be here with the one and only Josh Bridges.
Oh, no, thank you for having me. This is awesome. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah.
You can't mess this up, right? It's live.
Right.
So I can't be like, we're going to edit that out. So
you better make it good. So thank you guys for joining us. We're going to have a little conversation, and then we're going to open it up for questions from the audience. So definitely stick around until the end.
Yeah.
But I thought we'd just start off with a little bit about your season, because you have been competing at almost every single CrossFit Game since 2012, I think with one exception.
11.
Okay, 11.
So, yeah, 12 was the first year I missed, actually. That was when I dislocated the knee.
And this year, we didn't see you during the season. So give us an update about what you've been up to this year and where you're at now.
Yeah, so after last year's games, which I shouldn't have been at anyways, but I decided to
It
come.
looked pretty painful from the stands.
Yeah, like no ligaments basically in this left knee, and my joint was misaligned, and I kind of realized it after regionals. I was like, something wasn't right. After 5 different times, like wanting to like break windows in my garage, and while I'm training, I'm just like, I should just not even go to the games. And then I decided to go, and I was like, who knows where it's gonna go. So I'm gonna go have fun. And I tried to take the games in last year with a little different perspective than other years, where I knew I wasn't coming to win. I was coming to basically just participate. And so I had to change my mindset, and I knew that I was going to have surgery right after. And so after the games, took a little while, finally got the surgery done in middle of February. I had an osteotomy done on my left knee, which is where they basically break your leg to realign your joint. And they put like 9 screws in this knee. So
wow,
it almost looks like a real knee. It's not a real knee just yet.
There's a good scar there.
Yeah, it's a good scar.
Yeah.
So, the doctor was actually really hopeful that I'd be able to get a lot of relief out of just this surgery, because I don't have any ligaments still. I don't have an ACL, a PCL, or an MCL in this knee. But he's like, I don't want to do 2 surgeries right away, back to back, because it'll cause a lot of stiffness. So let's see what you get out of the osteotomy, which is where they just realign the joint. And so far, I'm running again, which is huge. So, and I'm doing very light Olympic weightlifting, and I'm like kind of starting to ramp up the weights on like strength, like squatting and deadlifting. But yeah, so it's just been a road to recovery. Hopefully to try to come back and qualify for 2020.
I know we would all love to see that. You mentioned initially maybe some frustration punching some things in your garage going through this process, but can you talk us through kind of from a mental perspective of going through that, competing every year at the games at a high level and then having to really take a step back and what you've learned from this process? Yeah,
it's definitely getting older. It's easier to accept for sure. Not, it's not the easiest thing, realizing, maybe you aren't who you were at some point in your life, and then trying to focus on the future and where you're going and where you're heading and what you're still capable of doing. And right now, like when I told my doctor, I was like, I do still want to compete. I want to have this surgery so that I can come back and compete, but I also want to have this surgery so that like I can play sports with my kids. Yeah. Like that's been like one of the hardest things, is like not being able to just wrestle with my boys or play baseball in the backyard. They're like, oh, Dad can't run. You'll have to run for Dad while we play baseball, and I'm like, you're 9 and 7. I'm like, this is a bummer. But, so, just changing my perspective in the fact that, and taking it easy coming back in from the recovery process, where in 2012, when I dislocated my knee, it was like, I'm here. I like immediately was squatting. I was pushing the limits of like everything that my doctor said and my physical therapist said to do. I was pushing the limits and being like, okay, they're saying I can do this, so I'm going to step it just a little bit farther. Or this time I'm like, I'm going to step it just a little bit back. Yeah. And just hoping that down the road that, if I do get to compete again, that'll be great. But really, I just want to be out of pain in this knee so that I can live a happy life and like play and do things with my kids as well. So
awesome. That's an awesome perspective to have. Even though I'm sure we would all love to see you back out there, I think we would rather you be able to play with your kids too. So as you've gone through this recovery process and even, through your long career, are there any things that you've done for your recovery outside of just the physical training that you think have made a big difference?
I've done a lot of stuff. Yeah. I'm a huge proponent in trying just about anything, and so anytime I hear anything, I've been doing a lot of sauna work, and a lot of cold tub therapy. Awesome. I've done all the the PRP injections in the stem cell, and the stem cell. Actually, I did stem cell pre-surgery. Okay. Because I was always kind of having a little bit of knee pain since the first injury. Sure. And the stem cell, I thought it really did something. It was just really expensive. And so it's not an easy thing, an easy accessible thing for a lot of people. I took a chance on it and I was like, I'll see it. And I thought it helped. I just don't know longevity wise if it was like a huge drastic thing, but yeah. Other than that, like acupuncture, cupping, cold tub therapy, the sauna therapy, which I like the studies they're having now with like the heat and the cold shock therapies is crazy.
There's really great stuff coming out now about it.
Yeah. I listen to Rhonda Patrick.
I love her.
Yeah, she's amazing.
She's my favorite podcast.
Yeah, I listen. I watch her YouTubes all the time, and like the stuff that she just talks about is just it's mind blowing. Like the hormone the changes in the hormone levels from the hot therapy and the cold therapy and all that kind of stuff, and the Wim Hof, the breathing. Because I was actually, I want to say it was 17 or 18. I was getting sick literally like every 2 or 3 months.
Wow.
And I'm like, what's wrong with my immune system? Why am I like, what's happening? And I started doing the cold tub therapy and the breathing techniques. And I literally and you know what, I was like pretty adamant about doing it. And then I stopped doing it about 2 months ago, like consistently. Yeah. And I got sick.
Interesting.
Unbelievable.
That immune system. It's an amazing thing.
Right.
So you are known for a phrase that you use a lot about paying the man.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I've seen a lot of people walking around with shirts that say "pay him" on the back. Can you talk about where that came from and what that means to you? Yeah.
So it was something that's basically said in the military. It was kind of more of a thing like when you got in trouble. Hey, you're gonna pay the man, right?
Yeah.
Like what? You did something stupid. Time to pay the man. I kind of took it as my own after leaving the military and started to use it as like, I don't own anything that I have, right? I don't own my fitness. I don't own my health. And so to keep it, I have to pay the man. I rent it. And so I literally I think I just posted it one day as I was rowing like something stupid, and it just like caught on like wildfire, and it like, went from there. And so I just think it's a great saying for anything. And it doesn't just have to be about your fitness. It can be about your health, like everything, anything that you want it to mean, whatever that you want to keep, that if you don't use it or continually to try to grow at something, it's gonna go away. So
you have to put that work in every single day.
Yeah, exactly. Just put the work in, and you'll get the reward from it.
Awesome. And you've been putting the work in for a long time. I know you have a background in wrestling, which seems to be a very great background for CrossFit athletes.
Yeah, I think so.
I think we've seen several successful athletes that have a wrestling background. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about some of the lessons you learned from wrestling in high school and college, and some that you still think about or that you use today? Yeah, for sure. I literally think that actually a lot of people think that, or they think that I got my mental toughness from like the military and stuff like that. And it's like, no, it came from wrestling. Wrestling was physically more demanding than anything that I've ever done. It's college wrestling, especially. That's surprising.
Yeah.
You wouldn't expect that.
No, it's insane. Like I remember I've gone to a couple of universities and spoke to some of the wrestlers there at a couple of different universities, and I'm like, I always tell them, they're like you're a Navy SEAL CrossFit Games athlete. I'm like, the hardest thing I ever did was college wrestling. Wow. And I didn't even wrestle D1. I was like an NAI wrestler. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, it was just, and I don't know if it was just how young I was when I went into it, not expecting it and just not ready for it. But it was brutal and it was tough. And I had a great high school wrestling coach who he had so much passion and so much fire, and he would yell at us and just, scream at us to go, break through your wall, because he'd see people, in wrestling practice, you see these highs and lows, because it's just such a physical and demanding sport to where you just start to get run down halfway through practice. And the coach would see that, and he'd be screaming at us to try to push through our wall. And that was one of the biggest things I always took away, push through your wall. And I use that still to my day. I'm push through my wall, because if you hit the wall and you stop, you're not going to grow as an athlete or a person. You have to push through the wall. That's where you see the growth. So that's amazing. Yeah. So after wrestling, then you eventually decided you wanted to become a SEAL. Yeah. Can you take us through that process? When did that thought first enter your mind? And then what was the process for you deciding you wanted to train for it, and then the selection process? Well, yeah, so I only went to college for a year, wrestled there for a year, and I decided that I was, too good for school. I was too smart for it. Too cool for school. I didn't need it anymore. So I wanted to go into the business world, and I became a telemarketer for SBC, the phone company.
So you're used to wearing these.
Yeah,
these
exactly. Like beep, beep. Hello, thank you for calling SBC. Yeah. But so I went into the telemarketing business, and that was awful, painful. I stayed there for like 2 years. It was miserable.
Wow.
I have no idea how I did it, to be honest.
Talk about paying the man.
Right, exactly. And then I became a loan officer at Wells Fargo, and I was basically like, if you bought or refinanced your house, I was the guy who gave you your loan.
Okay.
And so another miserable job that I thought was awesome for like a second, and then like, this is terrible. And so at my second mortgage company I worked for, a guy that I met named Mike Singer. I'll call him out because he's a great dude, because not only did he introduce me to the Navy and be a SEAL, he's the same guy who introduced me to CrossFit.
Wow.
He's like, I'm going to go be a Navy SEAL. He's like, and this is what they do. This is what some of these guys do to get in shape. It's CrossFit. And I'm like, oh, that sounds cool. And that was like January of 2005.
Okay.
And I was like, he's like, do you want to come try CrossFit with me? And I like type in CrossFit.com or whatever. And I'm like, oh, okay.
What's this?
I'm like, whatever. I'm like, yeah, it looks kind of cool. I'll give it a shot with you. And literally, like, I want to say it was like January 16th, 2005 is when I started doing CrossFit. And like, from that day on, I've never stopped. I'm like, this is awesome. I'm like, this is so much fun.
That's amazing.
And
were you doing anything to work out at that time? Like,
no.
Between wrestling and then?
Wait, so after wrestling, I literally stopped working out. After I left school and I was in when I was in the business world, I stopped working out. I was like, I'm not doing anything. I'm like, I'm over
done.
it. I don't need to work out anymore. I'm in a shape, and it's called round. Yeah. And so
do you have any pictures of that time?
I probably do somewhere, or my mom does, or somebody does. But yeah, I was not in shape at all. And but then about a year prior to that, I started going back to like a Globo gym and just doing a normal like bodybuilding routine, because that's the only type of working out that I knew of. And so, but I still wouldn't call myself in shape at all. So I did that, and then when he introduced me to CrossFit, so that was January 2005, and literally like ever since then I was just like, okay, this is awesome. And then about 2 months later I was like, so wait, you want to be a Navy SEAL? What's that? Like, I had no idea what it was.
So you had never really been exposed to it before?
No, never.
Wow.
Like I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, which is like landlocked,
you
know, like Navy, water, SEALs, what is that? You know, like I knew what Army Rangers were and I knew what Marines were, because everyone does, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, what's a Navy SEAL? So I started doing my research, started looking into it, seeing what it was, read that it's the most physically demanding training in the planet. And I'm like, this sounds kind of interesting. Okay, I like this. This sounds fun.
So that was attractive to you to do the most difficult possible thing.
Yeah, that's what, yeah. And so I'm like, okay, when I was younger, I always thought, like, being naive, being like, oh, you know, you see movies like Full Metal Jacket or Navy SEALs and be like, ooh, boot camp. That looks really tough. Like, I want to see if I can go through boot camp. Yeah. And then I just never pursued it, you know, and then kind of when I got that, when Mike kind of told me about the SEALs, I was like, okay, I want to try this. Yeah, this looks really cool. And you know, I think I could do this. Like, I wrestled in college. Like, I've done some pretty demanding things with my body. So, at that point, I decided, I'm like, okay, I'm going to give myself a year to train for this, to work myself up, and then I'm going to enlist and go in. Okay. So, yeah, so I ended up going into the military in March of 2007.
Wow. And I know the selection process is not easy. Not very many people make it to that level. Yeah. What do you think, if you had to pick maybe one quality about yourself that you think allowed you to be successful, what would you say it was?
You know, that's tough, because I just didn't want to let myself or any of my friends and family down. It was really what I thought. I was like, all right, I committed to this. This is what I'm going to do. And I gave myself no plan B. I'm like, there's no out. I'm like, I'm not going to pick another job that I'd want to do in the Navy. Like, I don't even want to be in the Navy if I'm not a Navy SEAL, you know? So I'm like, this is it. Like, you're not going to quit. You can't quit. And that's pretty much what I told myself, is like, you can't quit. There's no quitting. And I don't know what it was, but I felt I prepared really well. I did a lot of, I kind of looked into what I needed to do and what Navy SEALs do and what I should be ready for as much as possible. It's not quite as accessible as it is now as it was back then, or for me back then, but I did enough research, and there was a couple books out that you could read that kind of gave you a perspective into what was going to hit, what I was going to come across. And so I felt like that helped a little bit.
So you said you gave yourself no option, that you weren't going to quit. Were there ever moments where that thought entered your mind, and then how did you turn that around?
You know, to be honest, if you read any books, any Navy SEAL books, it's like everyone's like, oh, everyone thinks about quitting. And to be honest, I didn't.
You never did.
I never did, because I always remember thinking, I always tried to have a perspective of like, I was running on a beach with a boat on my head. You know, it was like, I'm getting paid right now. Not a lot of money, but I'm getting paid right now to run on a beach with a boat on my head, and it's literally just working out all day long. And I'm like, this is the best job or shoot guns and, you know, like learn tactics. It's
so maybe
really
better
fun.
than telemarketing or selling loans.
Slightly.
Maybe you had that perspective.
Just slightly. Exactly. I lived that world, and I knew I never wanted to go back to it.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is fun. I'm okay with this. Even though it was really tough and really challenging, it was just, I loved it. I loved it. I actually had fun. I mean, don't get me wrong. There was definitely moments where if you would have caught me on a bad day, I would have been like, this sucks.
Sure.
But, you know, to be honest, I never really thought about quitting. I always, like, if I ever got into a low moment, I would just be like, you're on a beach in the ocean. Like, the ocean, I literally had beachfront property. My room that got inspected, the window, I could hear the waves crashing.
Wow.
I'm like, no, this is ridiculous. I love this.
So you were able to just kind of keep things in perspective.
Yeah,
even
exactly.
When it seemed
like as tough as they were and as tough as it was like at the moment there was nowhere else I wanted to be. So
that's awesome. So now you're a SEAL, you're in active duty, and at some point along the way you decided, hey, I'm an active duty SEAL, I have a family. Why not train for the CrossFit Games?
Right.
That sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, exactly.
Where did that idea come from?
You know, obviously I always followed it because I started doing it in 05. And so when the first CrossFit Games hit in 07, I actually remember when it came out and they like put the flyer out. And I actually used to talk with James Fitzgerald, the guy who won the first games, like through email.
Yeah.
And I would be like, and I was like, oh, hey, James, did you see that thing that they're going to do this competition? Like, this thing's pretty cool, doesn't it?
Yeah.
He's like, yeah. I'm like, I don't think I'm going to be able to go, though, because I'm enlisting into the Navy in March. And he goes on and wins it. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And I just kind of followed along. And 08, you know, I was still in SPT. So it wasn't like, when you're a student, there was no option there to even like try to do that. 09, I ended up deploying. Or no, I'm sorry. 09 was my first workup, so you're a new guy, so you have
Not
no
a lot of
down.
room, yeah.
You have no downtime. And then 10, I was deployed, and then 11, it was like the season kind of lined up to where I remember asking my chief, I was like, hey, I think I want to try to go do this CrossFit Games thing, and I'm not gonna have to miss a lot of training. Are you good with it? Mm-hmm. And he looked at me and he's like, and he didn't really know a lot about CrossFit. He goes, he knew a little bit, and he goes, what's your Fran time? And I was like, it's 2:02. He goes, okay, you can give it a shot.
So he knew enough that was a good Fran time.
So he knew, just based off the Fran time alone. And so I only had to miss a little bit of work for that. And but looking back on 2011, that was like the craziest year because we were in the middle of a workup, and like a workup is not easy. Like we're out in the desert doing, you know, up down drills at 130 degrees for like 12 hours a day, you know, just nonstop. And you get these little breaks in between your sessions of workout with military. Yeah. And like, and everyone goes like takes a nap or eats food. And I literally would go in the gym and work out. I was like, and I look back and I'm like, how the hell did I do that?
It's crazy.
Sorry. Okay. Now I can hear myself too. Okay, good. So yeah, I don't even know how I was able, like looking back, I'm like, that is actually one of the things, like during the journey, you sometimes you don't appreciate the things that you can accomplish because maybe you didn't reach your goals. And in 2011, I took second, and I was really bummed about taking second because I really thought I had a good shot at winning. Yeah. And looking back now, it's just like, it's incredible. Like, I'm like, wow, I can't believe that I did that. You know, like, so.
It's amazing. I mean, people tell me like, oh, I can't believe you went to med school and did the games. And I'm like, I was reading a book all day. I was not working out
Right.
and then training for the CrossFit Games. So, I mean, I can't even imagine.
But the stress, though, is still the same. I mean, I can't imagine the stress of medical school and also training for the games.
Yeah, I mean, it's all stress, but it's, I don't know. I would have taken the nap probably if I was you. So how long did you do that where you were, on active duty or training with the military and training for the CrossFit Games?
Yeah, so that was until 2015 is actually when I got out of the military. I got out in October of 2015. So every season that I competed, which 12 was the only one that I was injured in 12, so I didn't get to compete that year. But 13, 14, and then 15, I all was doing both. So
okay, and what all went into the decision for you of deciding it was time to retire from the military?
It was more so about being away from my kids. So the last 3 years in the military, I was in a training command where I got to come home every night, most nights at least. And so that was nice, right? I wasn't away all the time. And my kids were at that time. So my kids were now 3 and 5.
Okay.
And I was getting to the point where I was like, do I want to continue to have this selfish job of like being I loved being a SEAL. Like, it was the greatest opportunity I've ever had. But it takes you away a lot because when you're actually in a platoon working up to deploy, you're gone probably 85% of the time, even in training. And then when you're deployed, you're gone 100% of the time, right? So it became a point where I was like, all right, do I want to watch my kids, grow up, or do I want to see them just a week here and there? So for me, I made the choice that it was like, and I had the opportunity with CrossFit where I think I could have continued to basically live off of what I was making and train to just be an athlete. And so, I took a shot and I'm glad I did. It paid off and I've gotten to do a lot of things with my kids that a lot of parents probably don't get to do even with just normal jobs.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So as we look at this season, you knew from the beginning you were going to take this season out, and a lot of changes happened this season when it comes to the format of qualifying for the CrossFit Games. So I think, in many ways, maybe you had an advantage of sitting back and watching it all play out for a year before you get back in there. But what were your first thoughts when you heard about some of these changes, and then seeing it all now being here at the 2019 Games? Has it influenced how you're going to approach next season?
Oh, for sure. My first initial thought, I think, was like everyone's a little bit skeptical, right? You're taking something that obviously worked and it found the fittest people on earth, and you're just, changing it drastically. And no one likes change. I think there's always that initial pullback from change, right? But as it kind of started to play out, you definitely saw the advantages to this season, I think, for the athlete where in the old season, if you had a bad week in the open, you could possibly not go to regionals. And then if you had a bad regional, you definitely weren't going to games, right? And so if you just happen to get sick that week prior to your regional, your season's over. You might as well just start training for next year.
Yeah.
Where this format actually it allows the athlete a little bit more time to where, say you don't have you go to a sanctional, you have a bad sanctional, you got another month. Their sanctions almost all the way up to the games now. So, and that aspect, I really did like it. I think it's cool. I think there's more chances to make money out there now. You have more opportunity with more sanctionals, so you don't just have your 3 weekends. So, it's a really and then watching I was really the 150 athletes up on the field at a time. I'm like, and the workout to dictate the cuts had to be perfect.
Right.
And I literally texted Dave afterwards and I was like, Dave, that was the best workout I've ever seen at the CrossFit Games. I'm like, I wish with all my heart I could have participated in it. That was literally handwritten on the board. I'm like, that's the coolest workout at the CrossFit Games ever.
Yeah.
And
it was such a perfect test for that cut.
It really was. For that cut, it was and I think overall, just for fitness, I was like, you nailed it. I'm like, you nailed the domains, you nailed the movements, you nailed the reps, you nailed the weight. I'm like, it was perfect. So
That's awesome.
It was actually a lot better to watch than I expected it to be. The second event was really cool too, and I think it did the same thing. It did the job that it needed to do to get the right people to move on. So it it has been a wild ride to watch, and it has played out way better than I thought it was going to. So
definitely, and I'm excited to see how it all ends up at the end of the weekend.
How about you? What did you think?
I completely agree. I think, at the beginning, change is hard for everyone because, especially I think being an athlete, I can't imagine, I know how stressful it was when you knew exactly how the process was going to go, but with so many new factors, you have to really adapt your training, and there's so many decisions to make about what events you're going to do. And there's so many more variables now. And so I think in the end, it does make it a lot more exciting to watch. And I think, they got the right people here at the games. Yeah. I think that the representation from so many more countries was amazing to see. And I think with that, every single year, we're just going to see that grow, and it's going to be more international.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think it was seeing all those people out there, getting their time at the games. It was incredible.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Very cool. So as you are looking forward, what right now for you, for Josh Bridges, what are your priorities and your goals and things that are most important to you right now?
Right now, obviously priority number one is just to get healthy again. Yeah. Make sure I don't need to get the second knee surgery, or at least at the moment, to continue to try to progress to coming back to the games. And then just that's kind of really it. Helping grow my brand with Good Dudes Coffee.
Yes.
No big deal. And then those are kind of like my two priorities right now. And then obviously the boys sports and school and
how old are they now?
They're 9 and 7.
Okay. So what kind of things are they into?
They're into baseball.
Okay.
Pretty hard. They're into basketball, but they're not really playing basketball. They're just into it. Like every little kid, they play video games. Fortnite. Fortnite's kind of going away, and something else is coming in. Who knows? I don't know. They don't get a ton of game time, but they get a little bit.
Okay.
So no, they're a blast though. They're so much fun.
Hard to keep up. Yeah. And now you were 36 years old, correct?
36.
36.
Yes.
So let's say, hypothetically speaking, someday down the line, you were able to qualify for a master's category. Would you ever take that invite and compete as a master? I know, it's like 36. It seems odd to call it a master's, but
yeah, I know, right?
That's what they say.
Right now, I as of today, no. But will I change my mind? I don't know. I there was a time where I said I'd never go team either, and I've told Rich, I'm like, I'd probably go team at some point.
Yeah.
So I think team would be in line. Like if I don't go individual, I would go probably team before I went master.
Yeah.
But at some point, who knows? I never say never, but
right. Anything's on the table.
Hey,
okay.
Exactly. Right.
So I'm gonna start wrapping up with the 3 questions I ask everyone at the end of the podcast, and then we're gonna open it up for some questions. So hopefully you guys are thinking of some good questions for Josh. So the first question I ask is the 3 things that you do on a regular basis that have the biggest positive impact on your health.
Ooh, biggest impact on health. That's good. I'm doing intermittent fasting. Oh. I feel like that's really helping.
Yeah. So how do you do it?
I do a 16-8. So
every day?
Every day.
Okay.
I started doing it. I quit because I was like, I don't like this. And then I came back to it. Excuse me. And I came back to it, and I was like, all right, I'm going to give it a real shot and not just like a 2-week shot. And once I got past like a month, I was like, it's actually really easy. So I do 1 to 9 I can eat. Everything else I can't eat.
Okay.
So.
And how does your training fit into that schedule then?
I actually train in the morning. Most of my training is actually fasted. Okay. And I have no issues with it whatsoever. I actually feel really good training fasted. So I think that's been huge. Mm-hmm. Definitely, I got like some testing back. My testosterone levels came up, which I've always had like really low testosterone. Yeah. And so I was like kind of shocked.
From that was the only thing you changed was the fasting.
Yeah, that was. Everything else has been exactly the same. So I don't know what else it could have been. So
very cool. Now everyone's going to start intermittent fasting.
I doubt I'll get. Yeah. So that was big, and then I do a cold tub and meditation every morning, 4 minutes of like deep breathing in about like 33 to 35 degree water. Okay. It's kind of playing off the Wim Hof method, but just I sit neck deep water and do like 20 deep breaths. And like I said at the beginning, when I do it consistently every single day, like I haven't gotten sick. And then I stopped doing it consistently and I got sick. So I think that has been huge. And I think the meditation aspect of it too, where I'm like actually just like the breathing and everything kind of culmination.
And do you is it just deep breathing, or do you any specific
it's kind of like
meditation practice?
It's like a 4 second in, 4 second out breath kind of thing. So
cool.
And I've been playing with some sauna stuff, doing like the 200 degrees for like 20 minutes every night. I don't know if that really helps or not, but that is worse than the 32 degree water.
The heat is worse.
The 200 degrees heat is insane. It's like I cook meat on a Traeger grill at 225. You know what I mean? I'm like, I cook food at this temperature, and I'm sitting in it for 20 minutes. It's pretty brutal. So yeah, that's those are like the three things that I feel like have made some drastic differences for me.
Sounds like it. Is there one thing that you think would have a big impact on your health, but you struggle with, or you haven't found a way to implement it yet?
I'm not the best. I'm not the cleanest eater.
Okay.
I wish I ate better. I wish I had a little better restraint.
So in what way, when you say you're not the best?
I eat a lot of junk. You know, like there's always cookies in the house. You know, there's or I'll get lazy and I'll be like, all right, boys, we're doing pizza tonight. And that's at least like once or twice a week. I'm like, I don't feel like cooking. So I wish I had some better discipline there with that in my life. And I know that it would make a bigger impact on me.
Well, the 80-20 rule is worth something, I think, too.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
All right. Last question is, what does a healthy life look like to you?
I think everything in moderation, right? Like if you're not too consumed by one thing, and then you can have a nice balance of everything.
I love it.
Yeah.
Balance. Awesome. Well, thank you. This has been awesome. We're going to open it up for some questions from the audience. So go ahead and raise your hand if you have a question for
Questions.
Josh.
All right. Make sure you speak up when I hand you the mic.
We have sons the same age as yours.
All right.
What's a great lesson you're trying to teach them right now?
Oh, man. I was just talking to my man, Tosh. Where's he at? We were just talking about this. I feel like my older son lacks a little bit of confidence, and it's tough. And I was actually asking him, I'm like, give me some, good examples of what you like to build confidence. I'm like, I struggle with it. Actually, I don't know the exact answer, because my 7-year-old, my younger son, is like straight hardcore leader, doesn't give an F, He's like, you want to hang out with me? Cool. If not, I don't care. I'm going to go over here and do my own thing. My 9-year-old's like, please be my friend. I was like, man, so that, it's tough. It's tough. It's really tough. It's being a parent doesn't come with a manual. And that's like one of the hardest things. Like, where the hell's my manual at? Like when things like this pop up, right? Like, I don't know what the answer is, but that's something that I'm struggling with right now to and just, I think showing them and leading them with, like doing things and not always just telling them what to do, and then letting them kind of give them a little bit more rein of the leash, and like letting them make their mistakes kind of can hopefully help, or not make their mistakes, or maybe they do something really awesome and they build confidence themselves. So I try to let them.
Outside of your injuries and things like that, what have you found has helped you the most that you're doing on your own time or at home or during training or after training, or other sports related or service injuries?
The two things we talked about, I think the cold tub and the sauna have been really big. I think acupuncture is huge. It's something that I highly recommend. I've been doing it since like 11. I would not come to the CrossFit Games without my acupuncturist. She's always with me. She does like cupping, massage therapy, but the acupuncture I think that's been a huge thing. And it actually helps with the knee injury as well, where it can help with like inflammation and just like turning muscles on and off that need to be firing. So I think there are so many things out there now for recovery that you should try them all and figure out which ones you like and work. I hate when people are like, oh, that's stupid, I wouldn't do that. It's like, well, why not? Have you tried it? No, I haven't tried, but I know a guy. Oh, okay, cool. So for me, I'm like, I'll go give it a shot, and I'll decide for myself if it works.
Yeah. Like, be your own N of one experiment. Figure out what works for you, because we're all different.
Yeah, for sure.
Coming from CrossFit NYC, the WOD that we look forward to as the biggest of the year is doing Murph of Memorial Day, which I know you're the poster child for. So when you're coming down the stairs in the stadium with thousands of people screaming, you let out that big wolf cry. What's going through your mind as that's going on?
As I'm coming, like the finish?
Yeah.
Hey, it's almost over. That's what I'm thinking. That's a special workout. I mean, obviously it's got a lot of history, and what it stands for and what it represents. All hero workouts do. I mean, we're obviously just honoring our fallen, the people who protect and serve our country and give us the freedoms that we get to do to be out here to have our fun, right? And so it's easy to push in those moments. It's easy to think about for me in those types of moments. I'm typically thinking about the brothers that I lost, and so and just hoping that I can make them proud in this little way that I'm doing, and keep their name remembered. Yeah.
Good question. You may recognize this young lady. She has a question.
Yeah, Christy, what's up?
Hey, Josh. How are you?
Good, Christy. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good.
I know you have said masters never in the past, and I was wondering what do you mean by that statement?
Hey,
and the fans want to know: would you ever compete again as a masters individual? What are your competition goals?
Yeah,
Putting
for
you on the
sure.
spot.
Yeah, so for Never Masters, it wasn't like a slate at Masters athletes, because that's what I got. I got hit with that hard, and I was like, "Hey, this is not what I'm. I don't mean that you guys suck, all right? Because it is actually very inspiring what the Masters athletes do. It is insane, and I hope that when I am 50 and 60 years old, doing the things that these athletes are doing, it's incredible. And so for me, it was just a moment where everyone was asking me, hey, are you going Masters? Are you going Masters? And I'm like, no, I'm not going Masters. Because in my mind, I'm still able to compete with these individuals. I think I actually still believe that I could, in 16, 17, and 18, I still believe going to those games that I could win the CrossFit Games, or I wouldn't have been there. I wasn't just, before I got injured in 18, I felt that way. And so the whole Never Masters was more for me personally. Like, I'm not a Masters yet. I'm still an individual athlete. It wasn't a slate at Masters athletes. So I hope that clears it up. I know it probably won't. I'll probably still get some hate for it, but whatever.
But kind of like what you said when you went into SEALs, you didn't want to give yourself an out.
Exactly.
So if you still want to chase that goal of individual athlete,
yeah,
you don't want to give yourself another backup option.
Yeah, because
not that it's a backup.
Right. It's not. No. Right. It was. And that's what people kept saying to me though. They're like, you should do the Masters qualifiers in case you don't qualify at regionals. And I was like, exactly, which is a plan B. And I'm like, I didn't want to have that. I'm like, somebody said, I think Frazier said it to me like 4 times, and I think he was just trying to get under my skin. And I was like, dude, if you say that again, I'm going to punch you in the face. All right? So that's what I meant by that. And yes, my goal is to compete again, hopefully, if the knee comes back. And right now, I think I'm trending that way for sure. So, yeah.
Good question. By the way, guys, that's Christy Atkins, 8 times CrossFit Games competitor over there.
No big deal.
She certainly knows it. A young lady just told me she had a question, and then she disappeared. So I guess we're just going to open back up to someone else. Yep, right over here, this guy.
As a sailor, how did you get into coffee?
As a sailor?
You're as a squid. How's that?
Coffee. So I was on my first deployment in Iraq, and I was in the turret, which is in a Humvee. The gunner in the turret, the gunner in the Humvee truck. And I remember I was just like, we were doing it like a all night recce, and I was just like up there on the gun, like okay. So I'm like, I got to figure something out, and I started drinking coffee out there. And so actually, I started with Rippets. I know if you're in the military and you've been overseas, you probably know what a Rippet is.
What is it?
It's like a energy drink.
Okay.
And they're like this big, and they only need to be that big because they're like a heart attack in a can.
Okay. And
so I drank like one of those, and I was like, okay, I can't do that anymore. I got to figure something else out. And so then I started getting into the coffee. And when I get into something, I typically go I go all out, right? I go professional at whatever I'm doing. So coffee was coffee was no different. So I'm like ordering like these fancy coffees. And I remember being on this website and I find green. It said green next to it. But I was so like new at this that I didn't know what that meant. But it was like the cheapest of the expensive coffee. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to get that. And I sent like, I don't know, $150 worth of green coffee to myself in Iraq. And I open it and I'm like, oh, this is unroasted coffee. Okay. So what do I do with this? Oh, that's right. I order a bean roaster. And I had a bean roaster shipped to me in Iraq. And I started roasting coffee in Iraq. And that's literally a true story. So that's how I got into coffee.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Over here.
Love it.
Question.
Hi, Josh. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Amazing. So huge fan for a long time.
I appreciate it.
Because you seem like you have fun while you're doing it. So my question is, how do you maintain that joy for so long, especially not in the limelight right now? And have you ever lost that, and how did you get it back?
That's a great question. Yeah. I really love competing at everything. It doesn't matter if it's CrossFit or if it's just competing with my 9 and 7-year-old son running across the field as I pick him up from school, which we just did the other week, and I beat them both. It's not a big deal. I love competing and I love pushing myself. And of course, yeah, I've definitely had moments like 2015 was a great time where I lost like the joy of what I was doing, and I lost focus, and I was like, I don't want to go into the gym right now, and it showed in my competition. Coming back from injuries is always really difficult. You know, you have these ebbs and flows, ups and downs, and you have to really push through the low times and enjoy the high times because, you know, everyone's going to deal with them. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're at the top or if you're at the bottom. Like, everyone's going to struggle, and just always bringing it back to why you go in there, right? Why do I really come into the gym? I come in the gym because it's my time. I get stress relief. I have fun, I enjoy doing this. And then if you start to really struggle and start to take it back to that and like remove the clock, remove like any sort of expectations on yourself. Like, oh, I got to hit this weight when I'm doing this lift. Like, remove all that and just go in there and have fun and enjoy that. Or go do something else for a little bit and then come back to it and see if you can gain it. Like right now, coming back from this knee injury, it's been brutal. You know, you're watching other people doing things that you want to, like, I'll drive down the road and I'm watching like some person jogging down the street. I'm like, you're so lucky. It sucks when you can't do the things that you want to do. And so, just getting past that, knowing that I'll get there and knowing that you're on the road to getting there and not thinking about where you were or where you want to be, but where you're at and like how much farther you are at that moment than you were 5 weeks ago. So yeah, it's tough, but it's, changing it up is huge, and that helps.
Good stuff. This is Jose from Mexico City. He's got a question for you.
What up, Jose?
Hi, Josh. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Fine, thanks.
Good.
I think that many of people like me, we are regular athletes who only go to their local box and train 5 days a week. And what would you recommend to all these people that are mortals, that we are normal athletes that are just wishing to make a better person every day?
Mm-hmm.
So what would you recommend to athletes like us?
Have fun, right? I mean, you're saying you're basically just go in and you want to be just better at life, right?
And if you wish to make to be a better athlete than just a regular one, what would you recommend to give the next step?
Find good coaches. Find a good coach. Someone who has been around, knows what they're talking about, which isn't always the easiest thing to do. There's a lot of good coaches out there, but find a good coach and get and have some structure with your training if you actually want to take it to the next level, and have some structure so that you can see progress. Right? If you could just follow like a GPP type program, a general purpose program, then you're probably not going to see that progress. Right? You need to have the structure, right? It has to be a progression so that you can see that. And so I think that if you actually want to go to the next level, that would be my recommendation. Mm-hmm.
Well done, Jose. Thanks for coming all the way from Mexico City. Who else? Come on now, guys. It's Josh Bridges. There we go. This gentleman right here. You're making them turn their necks around, man.
It's all
Come
right.
on.
Hey, Josh, how you doing?
Good, brother. How are you?
All right. Hey, what kind of music do you like to jam to when you're working out?
When I'm working out, I listen to just about everything. I'm a classic rock type of guy, AC/DC, Leonard Skinner, Led Zeppelin. But I listen to Adele as well. You know, like it's not a big deal. Rolling Into the Deep, if you're that song gets me fired up. I like it all. Like one of the only like I'm not a huge country guy, but other than that, I'll listen to just about anything.
Good question. Good. Who else, guys? Come on, this gentleman right here.
Josh and Julie, as a masters athlete, 60 plus, do you believe there's a time in life that the CrossFit format is not appropriate for an older person? And what would be the signs of something like that? That maybe a person should seek out other types of exercise programs?
So I think that CrossFit is what makes CrossFit so amazing is that it is infinitely scalable and it can be the best training program for anyone at any stage of life. But it's you have to scale it and you have to allow it to fit your stage of life. So I think, and there's a huge distinction between a master's athlete training for the CrossFit Games and a master's aged person training for life and for health. And that's true at any age. I think for most people who don't necessarily have aspirations of making CrossFit a competition or a career, it's the best thing that you can do for health and longevity, but shouldn't be approached in the same way that you would approach it as a competitive athlete.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think training to be a competitor at any age and to be just using CrossFit as an ideology and a training fitness regimen to be better at life, they're two drastic different things, right? You have to understand what is, and it's all a lot of thing for me is it comes down to risk versus reward, right? Is this movement absolutely necessary for me to be better at life, or could I do something that's a little bit less risk that a competitor has to do because they're going to do it in competition. They're going to see it in competition, so they have to train this to where when you don't need to train it, there's a couple movements that I would definitely not do, right? Because I'm like, that just doesn't make sense. And so for a master's athlete, yeah, if it comes down to if I train this, I'm going to be injured, then it doesn't make sense, right? I mean, we say CrossFit is functional fitness, but if where you're at in your life, you can't do it. It's like me right now. I can't do pistols. I can't do pistols on my knee. It's like I can't do it. I just can't train it, right? So I'm not going to do it. And if I was a person that wasn't trying to be a competitor, I would never do pistols personally. I would do lunges or something else. You know, there's always ways around it. There's always scalable, and sometimes we call them scalable options, but they're not even scale. It's like this is just a different movement that works the same parts and muscles that you need to work.
And I think one of the huge differences too is volume of training, which is drastically different for a competitive athlete versus a person who's training for health and longevity. You can do the same types of workouts, the same movements, but you don't need much volume for them to be very effective. And then the mindset of what you're pushing through. So for example, what you pushed through in 2018 through that injury, you did it because you wanted to compete. You probably knew it wasn't necessarily the best thing for your knee at the time.
Fact.
But you made that conscious decision because you wanted to compete that year. And so it's a different mindset about what your goals are.
Yeah, exactly.
Great question.
Yeah. I want to chime in and say my mom's 70 years young and been doing CrossFit for 6 years. Just throwing it out there.
Big deal.
She's a boss.
Heck yeah.
Questions, more questions. This young man right here.
Hey, Josh. Hey, Julie.
Hey, buddy. How are you?
I'm good. How about you?
Good.
So with where the sport's been going in the past couple years, people just getting better and better. Where do you see it going in the next couple years?
I mean, I think that it's just going to keep going up, right? You're just going to keep seeing the athletes get better. I mean, the longer the sport's around, the more people that see it, the more people that get involved, the competition, like in anything, right? It's just going to get better and better and better and rise. And I'm excited. I think these athletes are doing incredible things, and it's exciting to watch, and it's exciting to see.
I mean, watching how fast they ran this morning, that 6K with the weight. I mean, I think it's cool to see. I think we'll see more and more athletes being able to compete at the highest level with athletes outside the sport. Like maybe more athletes going to the Olympics for Olympic weightlifting, maybe more athletes being able to stay at pace with some of these other experts.
Yeah. It's really incredible. It's just, and I think it's also growing other sports too. Like you're saying, it's incredible.
Very good question.
We'll take maybe one more question.
One more question. All right, this young lady right here. How about we go to her?
How do you buy your coffee?
How do you buy it?
Yeah, can we buy your coffee that
Yeah.
you roast?
Yeah.
Online?
Yeah, gooddudescoffee.com.
Okay.
Great question.
That was an easy question. Well done. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Julie Fouché and Mr. Josh Bridges. Let's hear it for him. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey there, thanks so much for tuning into this episode. I had a blast talking with Josh, and I always have so much fun recording in this live format and getting the audience involved as well. Here are some of my biggest takeaways from our conversation. Number 1 was the importance of setting your mind on a goal and not giving yourself an out. Josh talks about this mentality in regard to how he succeeded in the rigorous selection process of becoming a Navy SEAL, and he also talks about it now with regard to returning to CrossFit Games competition. So many times we're capable of much more than we think, but the only way to get there is to stay laser focused on that goal without leaving room for the possibility of failure. The second lesson that I'm taking away is the openness that Josh had to different modalities for healing and recovery. Josh talks a lot about how he's used things like cold tubs, saunas, and even intermittent fasting to improve healing in his knee. We often think about local interventions such as physical therapy, electric stim, foam rolling, massage, etc. as important recovery tools, but this is a reminder not to forget about the big picture. If we can maximize the function of our entire body through nutrition, mind-body therapies, and temperature, it can go a long way when it comes to healing an injury. The third lesson was competition isn't everything. I love how Josh compares his mentality now to how he approached returning from injury several years ago. At that time, he was very aggressive in pushing his physical limitations, but today he's a little more conservative. He still wants to return to competition, but not at the cost of his quality of life. His main priority now is being able to be healthy, happy, and active with his kids for the long term. I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation as much as I did and that you had some takeaways of your own. To make sure you never miss an episode and to receive exclusive content from me, head to my website, juliefouché.com, and subscribe to my email list. If you like what you heard, don't forget to subscribe and consider giving the podcast a 5-star rating on iTunes. Also, don't forget to share your stories. If you or someone you know has used lifestyle to overcome a serious health challenge, please send me an email at info@juliefouché.com. I'll choose some of these inspiring stories to share here on future episodes. Don't forget you can train with me through Beyond the Whiteboard by visiting trainwithjuliefouché.com. Thank you again so much for listening, and I'll catch you next time on Pursuing Health.